as we take a look at the midpoint, I'm going to start with the segment AB. A midpoint is a point that's smack dab in the middle, but not just towards the middle, has to be exactly in the middle. Now I can't perfectly draw that, so I'm sure I didn't get perfectly in the middle. So the way that we use symbols to show that it's supposed to be in the middle is I mark the two parts congruent. So I'll mark the little hash marks on both sides. And so now at this point, we know that segment AC is congruent to segment CB. So the midpoint there would be point C. So it's a point that cuts a segment into two congruent segments. That's kind of the definition. Point that cuts a segment into two congruent segments. And then for segment bisector, bisect means to cut in half. So a segment bisector is something that cuts a segment in half. And if it cuts it in half, that means that it intersects it at the midpoint. So we've got to see. And this thing that bisects it, it could be a line, it could be a ray, it could be a segment. It doesn't really matter there, but it has to cut the segment in half. So it cuts a segment into two congruent segments. So it looks like very much a very similar definition. The only difference is that a midpoint has to be a point, whereas a bisector is not usually a point. It's going to be a line or a ray or a segment. But in either case, they cut it in half. So if we look at a couple of examples here. Example number 1, it asks us to find the length of AB. We see the little hash marks between AC and CB, so we know that C is the midpoint. So CD, this ray, was a bisector, but it cut it in half. But AC and CB are congruent. We know that AC is 2 1/4 units, whatever those are. So CB, since it's congruent, must also be 2 1/4. The question is, what's the length of AB? Since they don't put a segment line above it, they're looking for the length. Well, AB is a total of AC and CB combined. So I would add AC rather, in CB. So I'd add 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4. That would be 4 2/4. 2/4, of course, is 1/2. So we get 4 1/2 is the length of AB. Question number 2, we're told that C is a midpoint. We have to treat this differently than Friday. On Friday, we would have two segments that we added together, and then they equaled the total length. But in this case, I don't know the total length. I don't know how long the whole thing is. And instead, I know that the two parts are the same. They're equal to each other. So I write an equation to reflect that. 3x minus 2 and 2x plus 3, since they're congruent segments, those expressions are equal to each other. And now I have an algebra equation to solve. So we want to put all the x's on one side. So I'll subtract 2x over. And in the same time, I want to get rid of that 2. So I'm going to add it over. I'll do 2 steps at once. So 3x minus 2x is 1x, which I can just write as x. Over here, I get 3 plus 2, which is 5. So I get x equals 5. And that happens to be the first question they ask. They want to know what x is. But then they also ask what BC is. So if I look at BC, it's the one on the left. How long is it? Well, notice BC is, its length is represented with the expression 3x minus 2. But I now know that x is equal to 5, so I plug 5 in there. So it's equal to 3 times 5, which is 15 minus 2, giving us 13. Okay, next we have the midpoint formula. The first thing that I'm going to do with the midpoint formula is I'm going to cross it out, because it's stupid. It's not incorrect, but if you see that formula, it looks like it's something that you're going to have to memorize. And it, you know, with those subscripts, it just gets kind of ugly. The midpoint formula is actually really easy, and I think that looking at that makes it much more confusing than it is. So what are we going to do instead? Let's start by working through question number 3, and we'll kind of figure it out as we go. So for number 3, we have some points. We're going to graph them. So I'm going to start off making a graph. Okay, now I also understand that we're just coming back from summer break. You probably didn't plot a lot of points while you were on your summer break. And so I hate to just assume that everybody remembers how to graph points correctly. I hope you do, but if you don't and you don't graph them correctly, it's going to make for a lot of mistakes that are not necessary. So I want to slowly go through this graphing just to make sure we all remember how to graph a point. When we graph these lines, the horizontal axis, we call it the x-axis. I'm going to put a little x there. The vertical axis is called the y-axis. I'm going to put a little y there. And now when I go to an ordered pair, like let's go look at G here. It tells us, I'm going to underline this, I'm looking at this ordered pair here. G is the ordered pair 7, -2. 7 is the x-coordinate, and -2 is the y-coordinate. It's always in that order, x, y. So the first number is the x, the second number is the y. So this particular problem has an x value of 7. What does that mean? Well, it means go to your axis, or your graph, start right at the origin, right in the middle. That has an x value of 0, but we want an x value of +7. Since it's positive, I have to go to the right. So I'm going to go to the right 7 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'll hold my pencil there. I'm not going to put a point there because I'm not done. But instead, I can't move my pencil, so I use my finger. The y value is -2. The y value is the vertical axis or the up and down axis. Since it's negative, we have to go down. And we go down 2 units. So I go back to where I'm holding my pencil, and I just go down 2 units. 1, 2. And now I can put a point there. I went 7 to the right and down 2. That's point G. So I'll mark it with a G. And now I do the same thing with H, the other point. Start back at the origin. So to go back to 0, 0. Its x value is -5. So negative, so I have to go to the left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And its y value is -6, so I have to go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, about right here. And there's H. Now read the question. It says the endpoints of segment GH. So I need to connect those two, but I need to connect them as a segment, not as a line. So make sure you don't go past and don't put arrows on. Just connect them like this. I'm going to stop recording. We'll finish this problem on the second part of the video.